Hi everyone, welcome to my poster at Oklahoma Research Day. I did my poster over the light preferences of Hemidactylus turcicus, or the Mediterranean gecko. You can commonly find these geckos on your house or at night. They look like little pale geckos with spots on them. But anyway, let's get into the poster. So we did a year-round survey. So we surveyed at all times of the year. So winter, spring, fall, summer. We were even able to find geckos deep into the winter, as late as December 16th was the last time catching geckos, as far as I recall. But one thing that the literature has not touched on with Mediterranean house geckos is their light and perch light preferences. So we decided to do a full review of that. And with over 3,000 data points, we have a lot of data to make sure we have a broad sample. But anyway, our objectives were to identify patterns of behavior of the geckos towards light. So we took samples, captured geckos near buildings. So Howell Hall on the UCO campus, and the communications building on the UCO campus. We surveyed if they were near a light source, 1 meter away from a light source, or just in the dark. And we used a environmental light meter to see the actual, like, the lux of how bright or dim the light was, and that's what you can see in these figures. And we also assumed that since nocturnal geckos, these are nocturnal geckos, are light influenced. We assumed they're light influenced as light attracts insects. Anybody who's gone outside at night knows moths and everything like that will fly to a light. So we assumed that's the patterns we would see. And sources also suggest, such as Williams and McBrayer, sources suggest that geckos are also found at the edge of these light sources. And that was Williams and McBrayer in 2007. And they also found that they were found in less than 5 lux, which is the unit of light measurement that we were using. And so just for a little more background, Howell Hall was the original site of introduction for these geckos on the UCO campus. And from there, they dispersed, and they are found everywhere on the UCO campus, essentially at this point. And the communications building is near the outer edge of the colonization. And these buildings are all genetically a little bit different. Based on our work in the lab, we have found that there's genetic differences in all of these buildings. So we also evaluated the distribution of perch light preference amongst buildings. So our overall hypothesis was that gecko light preference will be darker compared to average wall light and similar to ambient light. So we can see in our graphs here that it is very between calm and howl. Calm stands for communications, and howl stands for or HOH stands for Howell Hall. A lot seems to be clustered towards the axis, towards the 0, 0 axis. And there's some outliers out towards 1600 and 1300. And we still do not quite know what those outliers were, but they were accounted for in our results. So, as I said earlier, our methods were we examined the exterior of these buildings at night exclusively, since these are nocturnal geckos. We measured the perch light, the ambient light, and the wall light of each observed geckos using ambient light meter, which measures in lux, and that's the values that you can see on the graph, or those are in lux. And we measured the wall light 1 meter to the left and 1 meter to the right, and the ambient light 1 meter away from the wall. And from there, our results, we found over 3,000 geckos. This was a multi-year experiment. These samples were taken over a long period of time, so a lot of sampling was done. So over 3,000 geckos were found at each building, observed in approximately 3 years. So about 200 surveys, and the numbers we have found. So in ambient light, so when there's a little bit of light, not completely dark, but not like in the bright, 69% of geckos were found in the same conditions within 5 lux, and 28 to 30% of geckos were found in brighter conditions. But on wall light, so directly on the wall, 81 to 82% of geckos were found at the same conditions within 5 lux. And 13% of geckos were found in brighter conditions, which is interesting. And 5 to 6% of geckos were found in darker conditions. So in conclusion, we can assume that perch light being similar to ambient light and wall light suggests that geckos are not behaviorally responding to light. As you can see in our charts, our figures, there's really not a real conclusion you can draw from the numbers of they seem to be indiscriminate toward light. This also agrees with Gomez Zoltar et al. 2006, and they found that light did not affect gecko presence. And a significant fraction of geckos we found are found at conditions brighter than ambient, but this could be due to a number of reasons. This could be due to lights being shown on the walls, different types of lights, just an array of environmental factors. But similar light responses of buildings across the buildings suggest that these results are generalizable. So not one building is not necessarily starkly different from the other. And these geckos are also sometimes occasionally found in very dark areas that the light measuring instrument, so our environmental light meter cannot reach. So this means some measurements may not reflect the actual light conditions and looks of some geckos. So that is something to be considered. But in the future, we will definitely take into consideration seasonal lighting in different locations across the years. And going off of similar studies, we will evaluate different age classes differently. And for example, Williams and McBrayer in 2007 found that juveniles were found in different lighting conditions than adults. So that is something to be considered. These geckos and Williams and McBrayer were in a different state, in a different population. So it is something to be considered since we are studying a gecko population much further north than a lot of geckos in literature today, which are commonly a lot of the literature is on geckos in South Texas, Texas, and Florida. So we are doing just about the most northern research on geckos at this point. So, and for acknowledgements, of course, I want to thank the funding provided by UCO, the grants, and the Fenwick Lab, and of course, everybody at OU Medicine for keeping me healthy and alive. But thank you for viewing my Research Day presentation. Stop.